How you doing there? Welcome back to Babble on Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Nun Gimel, Daf 53 of Masechta Chullin. Friends, in today's Daf, we are focusing on the, in my opinion, very interesting topic of drusa, of when one animal gets attacked by another animal, and under which circumstances the victim would be considered treifa. So I think it's going to be an interesting Daf. The Gemara has a kind of unique angle on this whole thing, which we will get into as we get started. So let's jump in. Let's learn Daf Nun Gimel Masechta Chullin. Let's enjoy ourselves and have a great time learning Daf Nun Gimel, Daf 53 of Masechta Chullin. So now we have quite a bit to do still on Daf Nun Beis, Amud Beis, but I wanted to kind of start fresh with this topic rather than kind of get started at the end of the daf yesterday. So we're going to start fresh with this topic of drusa, of when one animal is attacked by another animal. Now, what makes this sugya, what makes this topic somewhat unique is that the Mishnah and the Gemara has a unique angle on this whole attack thing, in that the science that this Gemara depends on is not compatible with the science that we are aware of today. Basically, throughout the Gemara today, we are going to be assuming that what happens is that when a wolf or a lion or even a cat or a marten or a hawk attacks, or a predator attacks its prey, its claws inject venom into its victim, and that venom basically will poison the victim and make the victim a treifa. And that's what drusa is. Now, in current science, we are unaware of wolves and lions injecting venom into their prey. So in that sense, there is kind of a disconnect with the science that we're familiar with and the science upon which this Gemara relies. So that's very interesting. I think I had mentioned maybe at the beginning of Perek Elu Treifis that I stumbled upon recently a shir from Rav Asher Weiss, actually grappling with this very question about when science and halacha are mismatched, right? When science and halacha conflict. And he has an interesting mahalach there, I think. So I could link to that in the WhatsApp chat for anybody who's interested to hear what Rav Asher Weiss has to say on the topic. I thought it was a pretty interesting topic. Even if you don't necessarily agree with his conclusion or whatever, feel like you want to resolve it in your own way, whatever it might be, or not resolve it in your own way, but the discussion itself and the topics that it brings up in and of itself are very, very interesting. So anyways, I'll hopefully remember to post a link, or of course you could remind me to provide a link for that. But yeah, I mean, today I'm not going to try to resolve this. I'm just going to accept that as far as the Gemara is concerned, a wolf or a lion or a cat or a marten or a hawk or whatever it is injects venom into its victim, and therefore the question on today's daf is, will that venom, will that poison render the victim to be, will it make the victim a treifa? And if you then shech that animal, is it treif or not? Okay, friends, we begin on Daf Nun Beis, Amud Beis. I'd say about 15 or so lines before it gets wide. There's the two dots there, udrusa saze'ev. So the remainder of this amud of Nun Beis Amud Beis, I think, goes a little bit slower than the rest of the daf, but I think all in all, I think it's an interesting daf. Says the Gemara, udrusa saze'ev. So when a wolf attacks, so Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav, bebehema min haze'ev ulemala, uve'ofis min hanetz ulemala. So says Rav Yehuda in the name of Rav, that when the Mishnah mentions a wolf, so when we mention like a wolf attacking a sheep, so it means that a wolf attacking a sheep will make the sheep a treifa. And the wolf is like the smallest animal that could make a treifa. So then obviously a lion would also render that sheep to be a treifa, right? So it's not specifically the wolf, but it's a wolf and anything larger than a wolf. And when we're talking about a nates, which is like a small hawk for birds, so it would be a small hawk and also a big hawk and a eagle and things like that. So again, when we're talking about an animal being attacked by a wolf, it's mina ze'ev ulamala, and anything larger than a wolf. So like a lion also would render the animal a treifa. Uve'ofis, and when we're talking about birds, mina nates ulamala. So a nates is like a small kind of hawk, and anything larger than that also would create a treifa. Lemutemai. Okay, so what would be excluded? What's smaller that's excluded? So we're saying, okay, fine, a wolf, if it attacks a sheep, can make a treifa. The sheep will be treif. And what if it what animal, if it attacks a sheep, won't make a treifa? If you're going to tell me to the exclusion of a cat. If a cat attacks a sheep, the cat will not make the sheep a treifa because the cat doesn't have enough venom in its paws, in its claws, to poison the sheep and kill and make it a treifa. But Tanina, I don't need Rav to teach me that. The Mishnah already, and I learned it out from the Mishnah. What does the Mishnah say? Udrusas hazeev. The Mishnah says that if a wolf attacks a sheep, for example, that sheep will be a treifa. So a wolf and not a cat. So already from our Mishnah, I can know that a cat that attacks a sheep would not make the sheep a treifa. Why do I need Rav to tell me that? And if you're going to try to answer by saying, Hakamajblon, what Rav is teaching us, is the Ave Bigasa Namidaris. Well, maybe you're going to try to resolve it like this. The diuk of our Mishnah is not what we just said it is. We just said that the diuk of our Mishnah is that a wolf that attacks a sheep will make it a treifa, but a cat that attacks a sheep won't make it a treifa. No, don't. That is not the way we are meant to learn the Mishnah. The way we are meant to learn the Mishnah is that a wolf that attacks any animal will make it a treifa, and that's the chiddush. That drusa ze'ev, whenever a wolf attacks, be it a sheep, be it a cow, even larger animals, the chiddush of the Mishnah is that a wolf that attacks any animal will make it a treifa. That is what the chiddush of the Mishnah is, and comes Rav to say, and a cat that attacks a sheep will not render it a treifa, because that would not have that otherwise would not have been the diuk of the Mishnah. What we learned from the Mishnah is that a wolf attacking any animal makes it a treifa, and comes Rav to say, and a cat that attacks a sheep would not make it a treifa. But that can't be the diuk. It cannot be that what we learned from the Mishnah is that a wolf attacking any sized animal makes it a treifa, because we learn in our Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, says Rabbi Yehuda, Drusas Azev Bidaka, that when we're talking about a wolf attacking an animal, it's behemadakas, it's sheep, it's goats. Drusas Ari Bigasa. And when we're talking about a large animal like a cow or a bull, so that's a drusas Ari, that would be a lion. But in terms of wolves are attacking, in our Mishnah, are attacking sheep. So don't come and tell me that what the Mishnah is coming to teach us is that a wolf attacking any animal makes it a treifa, because after all, Rabbi Yehuda comes in the Mishnah to say that wolves only make a treifa with sheep and goats. V'chitem, and if you're going to tell me, Rabbi Yehuda ma mipalig polig, and if you're going to tell me, so what? It's a machlokes. Sure, Rabbi Yehuda says that a wolf only makes a treifa with behemadaka, sheep, goats, but you can tell me that the Tanakama argues, and the Tanakama is saying that a wolf can even make a treifa any kind of animal. But Ve'amar Binyamin Bar Yefes, but don't tell me that, because don't tell me it's a machlekes. Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes says, Amar Rab Illa, Lo ba Rab Yehuda ela lefarish divrei chacham. That comes Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes, and he says that Rabbi Yehuda is coming to explain the position of the Tana Kama, i.e., the Tana Kama agrees with Rabbi Yehuda, and they hold that a wolf can only make a treifa of a behema daka, sheep, goats, not a behema gasa, and not a cat. A cat can't make a sheep a treifa. Why do I need Rav to teach me that? Right, a cat cannot make a sheep a treifa. Why do I need Rav to teach me that? Gavra karamis. So the Gemara gives two answers. Answer number one is, who cares that Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes says that the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yehuda agree, and that Rabbi Yehuda is explaining the Tana Kama? Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes is a Amora. Rav is an Amora. They argue. And Rav disagrees with Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes, and Rav holds that there's a machlokes between the Tana Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. And the Tana Kama holds that a wolf can even make a larger animal a treifa, and comes Rav to teach that a cat would not make a treifa of a sheep. Alternatively, I can give you a different answer. Rav can agree with Rabbi Binyamin Bar Yefes that Rabbi Yehuda is explaining the Tana Kama, and that the Tana Kama agrees that a wolf can only make behema dakas into treifas, sheep, goats, not cows. And we would imply, therefore, from our Mishnah that, okay, a wolf can make behema dakas, not cats. Cats can't make behema dakas treifas. So why do I need Rav to teach me that? I'll tell you why. Sure, we can infer from our Mishnah, right? We could say that Tana Kama and Rabbi Yehuda agree, and that the inference of our Mishnah would be that a cat cannot make a sheep into a treifa. However, still, Maudetema, I may have thought, Orcha de Milsa Katani. I may have thought, wait a second, maybe actually I shouldn't be medayik from the Mishnah that a cat is unable to make a sheep a treifa. Maybe a cat can make a sheep a treifa. So then why did it say a wolf makes a sheep a treifa? Because that's the normal scenario. It would be uncommon for a cat to make a sheep a treifa, much more common for a predator like a wolf to make the sheep a treifa. But maybe I would say that a cat could make the sheep a treifa nonetheless. Kamash Milan. Therefore, I did in fact need Rav to tell me, a cat cannot make a sheep or a goat a treifa. A wolf can, a cat cannot. It simply does not have enough venom in its claws to poison the sheep or the goat and to make it a treifa. Okay, Givaldi. I am going to chap a shuk of tea, and we are going to go weiter. Okay. Amr of Amram, Amr of Chizda. Rav Amram says, in the name of Rav Chizda, Drusas chosel vinemiya, a cat or a marten. A marten is like, it's kind of, you could look it up. It's kind of like a small little, it's the kind of animal that looks cute until it like slashes you in the neck and kills you. It seems like that one of those kind of animals, like out in the wild, fends for itself, kind of cute. In the photos, it looks really cute and sweet, but would probably kill you. It's one of those kind of animals. Anyways, so drusas chosel v'nemiya, a cat or a marten that attacks. Bigdim v'tloim, small little goats, small little sheep. Gdim, kids. I'm going to call them kids, right? So, right, if it's not clear so far, I've been using sheep as the example of behema daka, and I'll use a kid. A kid is like a little goat as an example of these small little animals. So a cat or a marten that attacks small little animals like kids, drusas chulda be'ofis, or a weasel that attacks birds. So Rav Chisda is effectively saying that a cat is able to create a treifa via the venom in its claws. Meisve, but we have a contradiction. Drusas chosul nates vinimia. That when it comes to a cat, a small hawk, or a marten that attacks, achatinokev l'chol, avol drusa leislu. Says this brisa that a cat, I'm going to use the example as a cat. We have cats, martens, weasels, whatever, hawks. I'll use the cat as the example because that seems to be the main one we're focusing on. So a cat, right, said aval drusa leislu. A cat is unable to make, a cat does not have enough poison in its claws to make a treifa by hitting another animal. If it makes a hole, right, what does it say? If it makes a hole in the stomach, if it punctures any of the intestines, sure, of course, it'll be a treifa. Of course, we know from the Mishnah at the beginning of the parak, any intestines that get punctured is a treifa. But the specific type of treifa of drusa, of slashing and poisoning, a cat is unable to do that. So on the one hand, Rav Chisda says a cat is able to make a treifa with its claws via poisoning, but we have a brisa that says that a cat is unable to poison. But the Gemara says, wait, 1 second. Before we start going all in on this brisa that mentioned a cat, a marten, and a little hawk, Nates lo daris, that we just quoted this brisa that says that a cat, a little hawk, and a marten, they don't poison. But really? Our Mishnah seems to think that a small hawk can poison. That's time we learned in our Mishnah at the beginning of the parak, Vidrusas nates. We talk about a nates, a small hawk, poisoning. Right? Drusa, right? Like attacking with its claws and poisoning. So maybe I'll define it. I'm like defining all these things, right? Little animals are gedis, big animals are sheep. The cats and martens I'm referring to as cats. The drusa I'm referring to as poisoning. But yeah, I mean, whatever. You have to, I feel like, just decide on certain vocabulary here. So anyways, so we see that a nates, a small hawk, is able to poison, but this brisa says it can't poison. So, ha lo kasha, well, this is not a question. Kan be'ofis kan bigdayim, v'tzloim. That our Mishnah, when it says that a small hawk can poison, it can poison little birds. This brisa is talking about kids, animals, little animals. Okay, fine. So we resolved that discrepancy about the little hawks. But mikol makom l'Rav Chisda kasha. But nonetheless, it's a question against Rav Chisda, because Rav Chisda says that cats can poison, but the brisa says cats cannot poison. Hu de Omar kihai Tana. The answer is that Rav Chisda holds like the following Tana. The signing that we learned in the brisa, Bribi Omer. It says Bribi. Lo amru ela drusa. Lo amru ein drusa ela b'makom she'ein matzilin. Aval b'makom she'yesh matzilin yesh drusa. That says Bribi. So Bribi says something very interesting. Bribi says when it comes to a cat, it depends. Sometimes it can poison, sometimes it doesn't poison. When does it poison? When doesn't poison? When does it not poison? Here's the thing. A cat that's going to attack a kid and nobody is there to protect the kid, so the cat will not produce enough poison to poison the kid. However, if he sees that someone is trying to protect this kid and the cat will get frustrated, then his poison will become more potent. And that poison and once he sees that somebody is attempting to prevent him from getting that kid, the cat then produces a venom, a poison that is much more potent, and that way it will kill, and then his poisoning will be capable of killing this kid. So now let's read that again. So, Hu de Amar Kiatana, Rav Chizda is saying like Bribi. The Sani we learn in the Brisa, Bribi almost says Bribi, Lo Amru Ein Drusa, when the Brisa says Ein Drusa, that a cat can't poison, El B'makom She'ein Matzilin. That's in a scenario where no one is attempting to save this kid. When nobody's attempting to save this kid, the poison that the cat produces is not particularly potent. But if there is someone attempting to save this kid and prevent the cat from getting this kid, yesh drusa, the cat's venom will become more potent and there will be drusa. So Rav Chizda holds like Bribi, and he will explain that when the Brisa, and he will explain like Bribi and say that cats can in fact poison kids if in the event that someone is going to protect the kid. But if nobody's protecting, so then the cat will be unable to poison the kid. Uvumakum she'ein matzilin ein drusa. But is that really correct? That when no one is protecting the kid, the poison is not potent enough? Right? Is that really true? That in the event where there's no protector, well then the poison won't poison? There was once a chicken. That was by Rav Kahana. And a cat was chasing the chicken. The cat was hungry, and the cat was chasing the chicken. Ve'ol le'idrona, and the chicken ran into a room. Ve'itchid dasha ba'apei, and the door slammed shut in the face of the cat. Umachya ledasha b'sichufe, and the cat then scratched and gashed the door. Ve'ishtekach ala chamsha korte dma, and afterwards on the door where the cat slashed the door, 5 drops of blood, keneged the 5 claws of the cat, were found on the door. So here we have a scenario where nobody was protecting the chicken. It simply ran away, ran into some room. When it did, the door slammed shut, and the cat then scratched the door, and there was blood represented, right? And that was an indication that there was a very venomous strike of the claws, even though nobody was protecting that chicken. And for the Gemara, Hatzolas atzma nami katzolas acherim dami. The Gemara answers, well, sure, maybe nobody was protecting that chicken, but that chicken was protecting itself. It ran away, thus frustrating the cat. And because the cat got frustrated, it produced very potent venom, and that is why it was so venomous. V'Rabbanan. Now, according to the rabbis who say that who argue on Bribi and who argue on the opinion that Rav Chizda is expressing, so they say that a cat can never, under any circumstances, produce poisonous enough venom to kill a gedi. So how do they explain those drops of blood that were found on the door? Zira isle velo kali zirare. Well, yes, they agree that the cat has this venom, but it isn't potent enough that it would actually be able to kill a kid, or in this case, a chicken. Igadamri, there are those who learn this slightly different. Okay, so we just explained that Rav Chizda holds like Bribi. But there are those who explain the situation slightly differently. Hamani, Bribihi, that the Brisa that says that a cat cannot poison, that brisa is specifically bribi. Decided the learned brisa bribi omer lo amru yesh drusa ela b'makom sheyesh matzilin. Again, it's better the same shita of bribi, but it's just a matter of where the emphasis is, where the focus is. Over here, bribi is saying that because the brisa had said that a cat can't poison, and that's bribi. Why is it bribi? Because bribi is saying, look, they only say that a cat can poison in a scenario where its prey is being protected. But by default, it can't poison, which is what it's saying in the brisa, that a cat can't poison. Again, lo amru yesh drusa, ella, they only say that a cat can poison b'makom sheish matzilin, only when someone is attempting to save its prey, to protect its prey. Aval, b'makom she'ein matzilin, but in an ordinary scenario where nobody's protecting the prey, ein drusa, well then there would not be drusa, the venom, the poison would not be poisonous enough, and that is what's being expressed in the brisa when it says that a cat cannot poison. It cannot poison by default. However, the rabbis argue, and they would say that even by default, a cat can poison, is capable of poisoning, and Rav Chizda holds like the Rabbanon. Now, frag the Gemara, u'v'makom she'ein matzilin ein drusa, as we asked a few minutes ago, is that really true that so long as nobody is protecting the cat, so long as nobody's protecting the prey, in that case, the cat is incapable of poisoning? But v'ho ahi tarnagoles, but what about the chicken? Tavoy be'er of kahana, derod chaso basrei, that the cat was chasing after it, v'ol le'idrona, and it ran into a room, v'itchi dosha ba'apei, and the door slammed shut in the cat's face, u'machi le'dosha b'sichufe, v'ishtikach ole chamsha korte dma, and the cat slashed at the door, and 5 drops of blood were found. So, and in that case, nobody was attempting to save the chicken, and yet apparently the cat produced quite potent venom. So atzolas atzmanami katzolas acherim damya, Bribi would explain, well, in that case, the chicken was attempting to protect itself, and because it was attempting to protect itself, that frustrated the cat, which is why the cat had such venomous venom and such poisonous venom. Okay, so according to that version, the rabbis argue on Bribi and say that in all scenarios, a cat produces potent venom, and Rav Chizda holds like them. But Mini Rav Kahana May Rav Kahana asks, Rav yesh drusa l'chassul o ein drusa l'chassul? Is there poisoning? Can a cat poison or not? Amarle af l'chulda yesh drusa. Says Rav, a cat, even a weasel, can poison. Yesh drusa l'chulda o ein drusa l'chulda? Can a weasel poison or not? Amarle af l'chassul ein drusa. To which Rav says, no, of course a weasel cannot poison. Even a cat cannot poison. L'chasav v'l'chulda yesh le'en drusa. Rav Kahana asks Rav, what about a cat and what about a weasel? O ein le'en drusa, can they poison or not? Omar le, and Rav says to Rav Kahana, l'chasul yesh drusa. For a cat there is poisoning. V'l'chulda ein drusa. For a weasel there is no poisoning. Okay, so what is going on over here? First, he is saying that weasels and cats can poison. Then he's saying that neither can poison. Then he's saying cats can, weasels can't. Velo kasha, here is the resolution. Ha de amar le af l'chulda yesh drusa. When Rav says that cats and weasels poison, be'ofis, they can poison birds. Hada amarle af l'chasul ein drusa. When we say that neither, when Rav said that neither can poison, be'imre ravave, that is sheep, like not little baby sheep, but proper sheep, sheepy sheep. Even a cat would be unable to poison a non-baby sheep. Hada amarle l'chasul yesh drusa l'chulda ein drusa. When Rav says that cats can poison, weasels can't, Big diem vitloim, that's kids. That's little, small baby sheep and goats. A cat is capable of poisoning them. A weasel is incapable of poisoning them. By Rav Ashi asks, She'ar ofis tmein, yesh len drusa o ein len drusa. So we had said in the Mishnah that small hawks, large hawks, they are able to poison. But what about other predator birds? Can other predator birds poison? Omar lei, Rav Hillel Rav Ashi. So Rav Hillel says to Rav Ashi, K'avinan be Rav Kahana, when we were by Rav Kahana, the Rebbe of Rav Ashi, not the student of Rav. Omar, Rav Kahana said, Sha'ar ofis tmein, other predator birds, yesh lahen drusa, they can poison. V'onantnan v'drusas hanetz be'of hadak. But our Mishnah had specified a nates, a small hawk, not other predator birds. So drusas hanetz b'dikavose ve'inoch b'dezutra minayu. The other predator birds that are smaller than these hawks, so they can only poison birds that are smaller than them. The nates can poison birds that, of course, are smaller than them, but even other birds that are the same size. But there's other predators, only birds that are smaller. Because those who say drusas anetz b'derabi minei ve'inoch b'dikavosayu. There are others who say that what it means is that the other predators can poison birds that are of the same size. The nates can even poison birds that are larger than it, so long as it is still within the smaller birds category. Because once we're talking about bigger birds, then it was the gas, the big hawk. So these smaller hawks can even poison birds that are bigger than them, but still within the small birds category. The other predators can only poison birds that are of the same size. Amar of Kehana Mishmei de Rab Shimi bar Ashi, says of kind of the name of Shimi bar Ashi, Ein drusa lishul, a fox cannot poison. Ini, is that so? Vakyoser Rav Dimi Omar, when Rav Dimi came, he says, Maise v'daras shual rochel b'merchatz shel besini. There was a maise where a fox poisoned a sheep in the bathhouse of Hini. And the maise came before the chacham v'amru yesh drusa, and they said, okay, it's poisoned. So we see that a fox can poison. Rav Safra hahi chosul hava. Rav Safra says that was not a fox, it was a cat. It was a cat that poisoned in ew. Which is interesting that we're talking about a cat poisoning in ew. Okay. As opposed, maybe it was like a little ew. Interesting. Okay. Does Rashi say anything? Okay. Anyways, fine. Those who say Amar of Kahana Mishmei de Rav Shimi bar Ashi yesh drusa l'shul, that there is poisoning for a fox. Ini, is that really so? Vakiyos Rav Dimi Omar, when Rav Dimi came, he said Maise v'daras shual rochel b'merchatz shel beis hini, that there was a maise where a fox poisoned a ewe at the bathhouse of Hini. And the story came before the Chacham. They said that there is no drusa, that it's not a situation of poisoning. So we had said that a fox does poison, but they said that the fox didn't poison. And that, so it says of Safra, that was a dog, it was not a fox. And dogs don't poison. Dogs don't have that venom in their claws. Amr of Yosef says of Yosef, Naktinon ein drusa lekelev, that there is no poisoning for a dog. Dogs don't poison, they don't have this poison in their claws. Amr Abai says Abai, Naktinon ein drusa el biyad, that poisoning is via the hand, tafuke regel, not via the legs. delo. Ein drusa ela b'tziporin. The poison is delivered via the claws, by the nails. Lafuke shein delo, but not via the teeth. The teeth don't contain this venom. Ein drusa ela midas. Lafuke shelo midas delo. That poisoning is specifically with intent, right? If that cat is chasing that chicken, it will then poison the chicken. But not if it falls off and scratches the chicken when it fell. Ein drusa ela mechayim lafuke lachar misadelo. And poisoning is only so long as the animal is alive. But if the animal dies and falls off the roof, and when it's already dead, it claws at a chicken, whatever, it won't, it's already dead. Amri hashta shelo midas omart lo lachar misa mibaya. For the Gemara, one second. We just said that even when the animal's alive, but it's unintentional, there will be no poisoning. It has to be intentional. Certainly if it's dead, it's not going to poison. There's no intention when you're dead. Lotzricha didaris u faskua liyode. It's talking about a scenario where the let's say a cat or a wolf, let's say a wolf attacked the sheep, but while it attacked the sheep, the owner came and cut off its hand or something. So I may have thought that as the wolf clawed the sheep, the venom was released. That the venom is injected when it removes the claw on its way out, not on its way in. Therefore, we're taught that. So when it's dead, we're talking about a scenario where a wolf clawed at a sheep, and then the owner came and chopped off the wolf's hand. The wolf's hand is now considered dead; it's disconnected from its body, and in that case, there's no poisoning because the poisoning happens on the way when the wolf pulls his hand out. But the wolf, unfortunately for the wolf never had a chance to do that. If a lion entered among the oxen, and a nail, like a nail from like a claw, was found lodged in the back of one of the oxen. Ein chosheshin shema ari draso. We have no concern, we are not concerned that the lion poisoned the ox. My time, how come? Rov arayos dorsin. Okay, most lions in this scenario would attack. Umiutan ein dorsin, and only a small amount, only a miut, would not attack. However, v'choladores ein siporno nishmetes. However, when a lion attacks, his claw does not fall out of his hand. And since this ox, there is a claw lodged into his, like a claw, I don't know, is like the fingernail. I'll just call it a fingernail. I don't know if it's technically a claw, a fingernail, I don't know. Since this nail is lodged in its back, Amar, I'll say that it's not due to an attack, because as we said, the attack, the fingernails would stay on the hand, on the lion's hand. So Amar, I'll say, Bakoso nischakech, that the nail got lodged in the ox's back because the ox went to scratch its back against the wall, and the nail was on the wall, and that's how it got lodged in the ox's back, but not because it was attacked by the lion. Adrab, I'll say fakert, I'll say the opposite. Rov shvarim mischakrin umiutan e mischakrin. Most of these oxen rub their backs against the wall. That, and when an ox scratches its back against the wall, nails don't get lodged in their backs. I'll say that since this ox has a nail lodged into its back, it is not due to scratching its back, rather it's due to an attack from the lion. Look, we gave two theoreticals. Maybe it came from scratching its back on the wall. Maybe it came from being attacked by the lion. We don't know. Take your pick. Uki milsa achezke, and therefore just keep the chazaka and to say that, look, until now we assumed that the ox is not a treifa. Let's continue to assume that the ox is not a treifa. Havale suffik drusa, it is a suffik whether or not this animal, this ox, was poisoned, was attacked. V'Rav l'taimer de Omar, and Rav holds ein choshishin the suffik drusa. We are not concerned about a suffix when it comes to being poisoned, when it comes to being attacked, and therefore the ox is kosher. Amar Abai says, Abai lo amarin elat siporin aval makom siporin choshishin. Now, this is only if we actually see the nail is lodged in the ox's back. But if we see that essentially there's a scratch on the ox's back, well, then we are concerned that the ox was attacked, and and that it could be a treifa. V'tzipor namin, even when the nail is lodged in the back, lo amarin ella lacha. It's only an issue of poisoning if the nail is we only say that it's not an issue of poisoning, right? So we say that when the nail is in the back, we said it's not an issue of poisoning if the nail is moist, because a moist nail would not have fallen out of the lion's hand. Aval yevesha, but if the nail is dry, avda demishtamta, then it could have actually fallen out of the lion's hand. Okay, so we said, we're saying that when the nail is lodged in the ox's back, we are not concerned about treifa, right? We're saying it was a chazak where it's a suffix and it's not a treifa. But that's only if there's actually a nail in the back. But if there's a scratch, then we are concerned about treifa. And even when we say that the nail we are not concerned about, it's if the nail is moist. But if the nail is dry, it could have actually come from the lion's hand. V'lachanami, and also when it comes to the moist one, where we are not concerned about treifa, lo amarin ella chada, that's only if there's just one nail, aval tarte v'tlas, but if there are a few nails, chayshinon, we are concerned about treifa, v'udekaima bedara de sichufe, that is, so long as, if there's, let's say, 3 nails, those 3 nails are kind of positioned in the way that they would align with where the lion's claws would have landed. Okay, fine. Itmar, it was stated, Omar, so Rav Omar says, Rav ein choshishin the suffik drusa, we are not concerned about maybe an animal was poisoned. V'shmuel Omar choshishin the suffik drusa, we are concerned about maybe an animal was poisoned, a victim was poisoned. D'chuli ama suffik lo all, ema lo all. So everyone agrees, Rav and Shmuel both agree that if there's a suffix about whether the lion entered in with the oxen or not, we'll assume, okay, fine. If we don't know if the lion entered or not, let's assume it didn't enter. Suffix kalba, suffix shunra, ema kalba. If we're talking about, we're not sure if it was a dog who can't poison or a cat who can poison little kids. So ema kalba, I'll say it was a dog, and we're not concerned about poisoning. All shosik v'itosiv benayu, if a lion went in with the oxen and was quiet and was just kind of chilling with the oxen, emar shalma shvi, I'll say that the lion made peace, and it's like they're in the times of Mashiach, and everyone's going to live in harmony. Kota reishe dechad minayu noch merische. Additionally, if we see that the lion is in with the bulls and one of the bulls is missing its head, and now there's a question, did it attack the other bulls? The answer is no. Clearly, it didn't work out well for one of the oxen, but once the lion took out his anger on that one ox, or whatever he had to vent about, he was vented on that one ox, he left the others alone. Iu ka me'avoe ve'inu ka mekarkiron. If the lion is roaring and the oxen are mooing, ba'use ka mevoase adade, they are both intimidated by each other. The oxen are intimidated by the lion's intimidated by the oxen, and nobody's attacking each other. Ki plige, finally, where do Rav and Shmuel argue? Where does Rav say we are not concerned and Shmuel says we are concerned? The iu kashasik, when the lion is suspiciously quiet, ve'inu kamikarkaran, and they are mooing their moos off. Marsavar maise ka'ovid bihu. Shmuel says, okay, this lion attacked. Umar Savar, whereas Rav says, Machmas biasuse hu dika avdon, they are just nervous and they are intimidated, but we are not going to assume, says Rav, we won't assume that anybody was in fact attacked. Amar Meimer says, Ameimer Ilchasa, the halacha is chosheshin l'safek drusa, that we are concerned that maybe a victim was attacked. Amar Rav Ashi Ameimer Hi dirav mai. Rav Ashi says to Ameimer, I mean, you're just you're assuming like Shmuel that we are concerned about an attack. What about Rav? On my lay, Amemar responds, Lo shmieli, klomar lo svirili. I didn't hear of Rav, i.e., I don't hold of Rav's opinion. V'baisema, alternatively, Hadar Bey, Rav Ligabish de Shmuel, Rav actually conceded and actually decided that Shmuel was correct, that we are concerned about an attack. Dahu sharkfa de safek drusis de also the kame de Rav, because it was a basket full of birds that were possibly poisoned, and that basket came before Rav. Shadrinu l'kame de Shmuel, but Rav forwarded the basket to Shmuel. And what did Shmuel do? Shmuel, of course, says that we are concerned about them being attacked. Chankinu v'shadinu binara. He simply strangled all of the birds and threw them into the river, never to be seen again, because he was concerned that they were all treifas. V'sal kadaitech, more on that in a minute. V'sal kadaitech lo hadar bey. And if it enters your mind that Rav didn't change his mind, if it enters your mind that Rav held that we are not concerned about an attack, about being poisoned, Lishrinu, he should have just said that these birds are mutter. Why did he send them to Shmuel? Elamai hadar bey. What? So you're saying, therefore, because he forwarded them to Shmuel, he changed his mind to hold like Shmuel? Lesrinu, if he changed his mind to hold like Shmuel, to say that we're concerned about them being poisoned, so then he should have simply said, these are usr. Why did he need to forward them to Shmuel? Ella asre de Shmuel hava. Rather, Rav was in Narda. Rav was from Surah, but he was in Narda, and he felt that since he is in Narda, he should not be paskening in Narda. He should be sending these on to the Morad Asra of Narda to Shmuel, but this is not necessarily an indication either way. This is not an indication that Rav necessarily changed his mind to hold like Shmuel, so this isn't necessarily a proof of that. Now, Lamali lemechnokinu, why did Shmuel need to kill all of those birds in the basket? Lishdinu hachi binahara. Why not just chuck them into the river? Why did he have to kill them first? Mefarchon v'salkon. Well, because the concern is that if you just dump them into the river, they are going to fly away, and then hunters can trap them and sell them to Yidden, and we're concerned that they're treifas. V'lishhinu shnei masar chodesh. How about this? Why didn't Shmuel just hold on to them for 12 months? Because a treifa means that they're going to die within a year. Leave them around for a year, and whichever ones are alive at the end of the year, then we'll know which are treifas and which aren't. Asibu lidei takala. Well, to keep them around for so long, something bad is going to happen. Somebody's going to end up eating them, and it's too tricky to keep these suffix treifas around for so long. Okay, but why not sell them to ovdei kuchavim? They don't need to worry about treifas. Also, the Zabninu Yisrael, with all the Kuchabim, could then go and sell them to Yidden, and we want to prevent that. Okay, fine, so you killed all them. Why do you have to chuck them in the river? Why not throw them in the garbage? Okay, well, says right. So we say, well, Shmuel also could have just fed them to the dogs. Why do you have to dafka schlep them out to the river? Rather, he schlepped them out to the river so that people should see what's going on. That people should see that these birds are being killed and thrown into the river because Safek Drusa is Osir. There was a duck that was by Rav Ashi, al Vene Kanya, and this duck went among the reeds, Nafak, and when it emerged from the reeds, also ki me masmes kue dma. And when it emerged from the reeds, its neck was all bloodied. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi, lo amrinan safik kalba safik shunra emar kalba. So Rav Ashi says, did we not say earlier that if we're not sure if a kid was attacked by a dog or a cat, a dog would be mutter, a cat would be usr. So we say it's the dog, we're lenient. So Chanami here as well, safik kanya, safik shunra, this duck could have been either gotten bloodied by, getting its neck cut against the reeds, or maybe it was attacked by a cat and is poisoned. Emer kanya machye, I will say that it got caught on some reeds, and that's why it is all bloodied. We're going to be lenient here and say that it is kosher. Amrei b'nei Reb Chia, the sons of Reb Chia said, drusa she'amru tzricha bedika. So this drusa, when an animal is attacked, it needs to be checked. Tzricha bedika needs to be checked. Keneged b'nei me'ayim, you got to check the intestines to make sure that there are no punctures, that the skin has not been punctured in any places. So you got to check the whole stomach area, underneath the stomach, the back, the sides, everywhere in that area. You got to look for punctures. Rav Yosef says, Rav Yosef ab dibnei Reb Chia kvar persha Shmuel damar Shmuel mishum Reb Chanina ben Antigonus drusa she'amru tzricha bedika keneged b'nei me'ayim. That which the bnei Reb Chia said was also said by Shmuel. By Ilfa asked, Yesh drusa l'simanim or in drusa l'simanim? Is there drusa when it comes to, do we have to worry about poisoning when it comes to the trachea and esophagus? Reb Zera says, Reb Zera had by Ilfa kvar persha Rav Chanan bar Ravid Rav Chanan bar Ravid Rav drusa she'amru tzricha bedika keneged beisachal kulo va'afilu b'simanim. You have to check the entire kind of internal cavity, all the intestines and everything like that. And you also need to check the kana and the veshet. By Ilfa asked, simanim shet nidaldalu, if the simanim, the kana and the veshet, got disconnected from the jaw, b'chama, how much do they have to get disconnected to be a treifa? Reb Zera ad by Ilfa kvar persha Rab bar Chana dam Rab bar Chana Amr Shmuel simanim shet nidaldalu beruban. If they got disconnected by a rove, by most of their connection, if most of their connection that got disconnected, so then they are a treifa. Boy, Rav Ami ha misamsa mau. What happens by misamsa? What's that? Could go darsa be misamsa. Right. If it gets attacked on its leg, and now the flesh is decomposing. Is there a different word that I want? Decaying, maybe. I don't know. So Amr Reb Zera Hadabai Reb Ami Kvar Persha Reb Yehuda to Amr Reb Yehuda Amr Rab Be Drusa Ad She Ya'adim Basar Keneged Bnei Me'ayim. Okay. When it comes to Drusa, so we are looking for red spots in the stomach area. Nismasmes, if it gets like attacked in the leg, Nismasmes abasar, and now the meat is decaying. Roin also kilu enu. So we have to view any of the decaying meat as if it doesn't exist at all. Echi dami nismasmes. What is decaying? Amr Rav Huna Breder of Yeshua kol sha'rofe gordo ma'amido absochai. Any scenario where a doctor would have to scrape away the decaying flesh in order to reveal healthy flesh, so that would be considered decaying. And if it's a part of the body that if it's missing, it would be a treifa, well then we would view it as though it's missing and it's a treifa. Rav Ashi says, Rav Ashi ki avinon bei Rav Kahana ay sukaman ay reya. When we were by Rav Kahana, they brought to us a lung, t'chiavu meisve la yazva shapir, that when it was just lying on the table, it looked fine. However, but if you would pick up the lung, have a talsa the nafla tilche, it basically fell apart when you picked it up. And we said that it's treif midu Avuna Breder of Yeshua, because of Avuna Breder of Yeshua, who said that we view the decayed any decaying meat, and in this case, these lungs that are falling apart as if they aren't there, and then that means that the lung is chaser, which is a treifa. Rav Nachman Omar bekotes acha tinakev lechalo, says Rav Nachman, by a thorn, if it punctures through the skin, so then it will be treif. We're concerned that it punctured in the intestines. Bedrusa mishayadim basar keneged bnei ma'ayim, and by drusa it's treif if there is redness by where on the outside on the skin where the intestines are. Rav Zvid Masni Achi, Rav Zvid teaches bedrusa mishayadim basar keneged bnei ma'ayim, that by drusa it's treif if there is redness on the flesh by where opposite the intestines, b'simanim, and when it comes to the trachea and the esophagus, achiadimu simanim atzmam, that the simanim themselves need to be read, as we learned about earlier, that by the esophagus you're going to check on the inside of it, the white part, the inside, and we'll also check on the trachea to look for redness. Amar papi bar abavi bar abaye veshet nikuvto b'mashu. When it comes to the esophagus, if there is any sized puncture, we know that it is treifa, drusaso b'mashu, and also if there is a red spot from a drusa, from being poisoned, even the smallest amount, it's also going to be treifa. Kane nikuvaso b'che'isr, now we know that by the trachea, if there's a hole the size of a coin, so then it's a treifa, drusaso b'chama. But what about by drusa, the red spot on the trachea, how big? A tiny spot, or also the size of a coin? After Bibi Bar Abaye asked the question, he answered it, also by the trachea, not just by the esophagus, but also by the trachea. We're talking about even the smallest dot. My time, how come ziare makla kali ve'azil? Because the poison is going to spread and become more significant. So even if there's just a dot of redness on the trachea, that will be enough for it to be considered treif. Friends, that was Daf Nun Gimel of Masechta Chullin. And Daf Nun Gimel of Masechta Chullin, we learned all about drusa, which is a very interesting topic, particularly because it deals with science in ways that we don't usually talk about science currently, which was just very interesting, talking about cats and wolves and lions poisoning with their nails. So that was an interesting exploration. We discussed which animals can poison which other animals and under what situations. And yeah, that was basically an interesting exploration there about drusa and poisoning. And that was Daf Nun Gimel of Masechta Chullin. I hope you enjoyed. I will catch you all tomorrow.